Hi, everybody. Wow, I'm so excited. There are so many of you here. Who am I? I am Tracy Fitzpatrick. I am the director of the Neuberger Museum of Art. I'm really excited to be collaborating with our neighbors from the Art and Design program to work together to bring this program to you. Tomashi, look at all the people. You're like standing room, people seated. They're here for you because you're so great.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Tomashi is the recipient of the Roy R. Neuberger Prize, which is a yeah, right. That's Robin. Which is a prize offered to emerging artists who we feel are saying something important about the work that they're producing. It is inspired by our founding patron, Roy R. Neuberger's devotion to supporting contemporary artists, living artists. And I want to thank Helen Stambler Neuberger, raise your hand, and Jim Neuberger, for supporting Tomashi, supporting this program, supporting the museum in so many ways. Thank you, and thank you for being here tonight. And I am not going to give a big bio on Tomashi, because you can just Wikipedia her with all that stuff, and it's kind of boring, and I know you want to, not that your bio's boring, but it's like boring to hear someone recite, so I'm not going to do that.
Give them a little bit.
Yeah. I can't because they don't have those notes in front of me. It was really like a big lie. So you go Wikipedia. And just saying the truth. If you haven't seen Tomashi's show, Tomashi Jackson Slow Jams at the museum, please come and see it. It'll be up until Thanksgiving. It's a wonderful, wonderful exhibition. I know Tomashi's going to tell you about it tonight. And in lieu of biography, which, yes, I confess I don't have that like paragraph with me, I just want to tell you, Tomashi is the most amazing person. I mean, I have loved watching her create the project in the Neuberger. I have loved getting to know her. And she's just the warmest, most special person. I know some of you are students who have benefited from Tomashi's wisdom even just today. I was so touched at the opening. Some of the students here performed, and Tomashi was so excited by the performances. I'm going to mimic what you did in the gallery. Yeah, no, I am. This is what you did. After it was all done, you did this. Because you are just the most warm, precious, loving person. And I think that's a better bio than what can be found on Wikipedia. All right, so without further ado, I give you Tomashi Jackson.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you, SUNY Purchase community and SUNY Purchase Arts community. Fun fact, this was my dream school when I was in high school. I'm an old arts high school head from Los Angeles, a conservatory child, a public magnet school child from the 80s. And I've learned a lot about how this system that brings so many of us together so that we can find ourselves in pursuit of the arts across disciplines, how very radical that vision was and how we continue to be beneficiaries of that vision. I take that really seriously. So it's always hard not to cry when I get to visit an art school because if we're doing right, we will always be art students. So it's really great to be here in your community. Spend some time with the students who shared their work with me and share some time with me today. Slow Jams is the first. It's the first exhibition devoted to a little over 10 years of video work of mine. And we worked really hard on this book. So congratulations to everyone in here for surviving the last 3 years. That's no small feat. And however you survived this as a community. I heard that there were printmaking classes without print shop happening, that there was a lot of drawing going on, there was a lot of collograph making going on. There was a lot of figuring out stuff that happened, and I really admire that. And after, or as we've been, I don't know what we're out of exactly, but I can tell you that this book is ready now because even after Slow Jams was mounted, we never stopped working on it. And I'm really proud of it. So you won't believe this, but there was a bit of a disaster at a port in Italy, right? Where the books are coming from? Yeah, a collapsed dock.
Yes,
yeah, something like that. So, we worked really hard to get this book to you. And then at the last minute, we could only get about 30 here. So the rest are coming. And you all will be the first to have them. They're for your community. Something that I wanted Slow Jams to do as an installation was to be inviting, to be floor to ceiling immersive color. The questions that I've been asking of the fourth dimension or video or the moving image or time-based media for quite some time. Well, first of all, I never trusted it because when I was starting to play around with video to interview people as an undergraduate student, a transfer student at Cooper Union, something always went wrong. And I studied experimental film and video at the old San Francisco Art Institute, right out of high school with George Kuchar and Tony Labat, early new genres professors of avant-garde San Francisco, before the tech boom and the annihilation of historic, old, radical, queer, black, brown, Pan-Asian communities. You'd think that I would be more comfortable, but I learned how to cut and paste 16 and 8mm film. I learned video as a tangible thing. I learned video like I would painting I learned film like painting or drawing, because film is not the same as video. So when I began to explore video, it just always seemed to fail. I trust painting, I trust printmaking a lot more. The students that I got to spend time with today, the artists that I got to spend time with today, all came in here as one thing, thinking that they were one thing and transformed into something else. And my relationship to video has transformed. I came to trust it. See, I'm gonna use the book because everything I need to say is in the book. These were my early experiments as a graduate student at MIT in the program in art, culture, and technology. Very, very broke, very, very poor, too broke to get home to Los Angeles to see my mother. And I found myself very interested in visualizing narratives of working women in the world, women who labor informally, work globally, and in doing so uphold the formal economy as we understand it. I was really interested in domestic workers in plain sight. When I got to New York City, I found that that's where the people who looked like me were, in the parks, with their heads wrapped, with the same cheekbones, with the same eyes. And I came to learn that some of those people didn't even consider themselves black, because internationality and Pan-Africanism is really different on the East Coast than it is where I grew up on the West Coast. And it took me a while to really understand that that's my family story. But it just looks different on the West Coast because we weren't on the street. They were in people's homes. Domestic labor in public space really interested me. I should go back to San Francisco for a second. I grew up in Southern California and spent formative years in Northern California, where I was really shaped by public murals, muralism, and activism. I was mentored by activists. I dropped out of school for 7 years. I'm a delinquent. Which is why, I find myself so interested, so moved and interested continually in our continued narratives of being art students who transform, and who shapeshift, and who adapt and find other ways that we didn't anticipate. So when I went back to school, I was still really interested in public space, and so I found Black women in public space in New York, and I was curious about what they were doing there. And eventually I ended up at MIT, and a friend, I'll pass on a little bit of wisdom that my best friend passed on to me, because she went to real schools. She always made fun of me and said I never went to a real school. Because all my schools were art schools, public art schools, private art schools, always small art communities with artists that I admired as cohort members or as teachers or as advocates. I didn't know anything about being on a big, fully resourced campus like this. I didn't know anything about that. So with her encouragement, I took classes at the School of Government at Harvard and ended up in a class on informal economies and learned that that very little had been done to visualize the lives of mostly black and brown women, definitely women all over the world whose informal labor upholds the formal economy globally, with no social protections. And I started to see in reading these white papers, I'd be the only artist, don't be afraid to be the only artist in the room. So I'd be the only artist in the room with future NGO leaders. It's the Kennedy School, so likely a few future dictators. That's just real, that's just real. But everybody's nice when they're at school. But I'm the only one like me, architects, city planners, and I'm sitting there and I'm kind of like, after I got over being afraid about being the only one like me in that place, I started to realize that the papers we were reading, the discussions we were having was about a sort of labor and economy based in love and sacrifice that I actually recognized. So I had to go to my mother to get this story, because she was the only one old enough, the only one of my grandmother's 9 children who remembered going to work with my aunts when they cleaned people's houses and watched their children in Los Angeles in the 60s. So I was too broke to go home. And I was like pirating software to record these Skype conversations on a netbook. And we were having these conversations that were so deep, and then I went to go look at the recordings and it was all glitched up. And I was devastated. I thought, once again, video failed me. Once again, everything is wrong. But then I started to reconsider what a mistake could be. So each of these layers is a mistake that happened because I was too poor to afford better equipment or to go home. If I had been able to go home, it'd have been an ephemeral conversation, actually. I wouldn't have been able to document it this way. So I took these layers, I learned simple things about like reducing their opacity, and I started to layer them on top of each other. All of this, I'm really challenging myself not to show you video. I have videos prepared, but I kind of don't want to show you video because you can go and spend time in the show. So these experiments led to more collaging. I thought of these as video collages. But yeah, whatever. I mean, it's a really good show, actually. Arguably it's a really good show. But I kind of just wanted to show you that like my relationship to video was very crude and it's very skeptical. I draw. I've always drawn. I paint. I've painted since like the 6th grade, since like the 5th or 6th grade. I quit graphic design because I didn't understand in Photoshop as well as what I could understand on the 5th floor of the Cooper Union print shop, what Photoshop pretends to do for us. I had to go learn with my hands. I knew people who were brilliant off the bat at graphic design. I wasn't one of those people. I needed to learn with my hands. And I needed to learn under mentors. So all of this shows up in the videos. So when I started trusting video, I started asking, what happened? Did you?
I just love that before the infancy.
Okay, this one? Yeah, I do too. Those are some Jacksons that I met in Texas. So when I got to, this is more biography than I even want to get into. I want to experiment with something with you all because we have this book. My best friend says that this essay is too long. This conversation is too long. But there are 2 conversations that happened in this book during the time that the book just kept on going. Like the book project just kept on going. I had a great conversation with 2 artists that you should know, Candace Williams. Anybody know Candace Williams' work? All right, you too. All right, art school, Candace Williams and Geneva Ellis. Geneva Ellis is a painter. I mean, they're both just artists. And they were kind enough to have a conversation with me during the lockdown. And I kind of did what I did with my mom. We spoke over Zoom. It's a lot easier now. I just pressed record and transcribed that conversation. Here it is. And I'll tell you why I'm leading back here. This conversation gives me goosebumps. This is when I asked if video could function as a painting. And if so, how? There's stuff that happened in undergrad, experimental stuff that happened. You know, when I quit graphic design and went to the print shop, then I started wondering what made a print a print. At what point or upon what surfaces does printmaking become painting? When I think about Christopher Wilmarth, a really amazing artist that y'all should know about, when you look at Christopher Wilmarth's work, they're sculptures, but many of them are wall-bound. Are they paintings then, if they're bound to the wall? If they create a window with another possible world inside of them? What makes a painting a painting? How does painting function? What makes printmaking function? What's the history of printmaking? The publication for the sharing of information. Martin Luther and the 95 Theses. Papyrus, you know, the documentation of mythic narratives and the movements of people. What is the purpose of all this? So, you know, I had some experimental experiences in undergrad, and I continue to carry that angst with me. I have questions about what is public and what is private. And in this case, how can video function as a painting so I can trust it? And if it can function as a painting, how? I learned from Rhode, studying video with him at Cooper Union, that people have a very low attention span for a painting. We, people who intend to go out into the world and show people our work, we're told, you know, don't expect anyone to stay with your video piece for more than 30 seconds if you're lucky. So, yeah, but then when I have an experience with Barnett Newman at MoMA for the first time, not in a book, but actually in real life, I see a zip painting in real life, and it completely humbles me and brings me to my knees. And I realized that it's not a joke, that this isn't a game. that color field painting is not like a scam, which is what I thought it was on the West Coast, looking at black and white pictures in a book. I was like, how is this like a thing? Like, how is this a, you know? So I carry that with me. So if that's what it did to me, if I've seen people in Texas, if anybody here is from Texas, if I've seen people at the Manil collection and the Rothko Chapel wait in line and stay for hours. A painter who's a mentor of mine, Byron Kim, told me once that he once got on a plane and went to Houston just to go to the Rothko Chapel and be in there for the day, and then got on a plane and went back to work. So if the things that we make are not just about, you know, our own nervousness and our anxiety or competing with each other when we're in school, or, you know, all these weird tics that we develop because we're inherently insecure and searching people. When these things that we do, maybe even after we're gone, become sacred objects, what's that about? So if I've seen people sit in front of color with holy books in peace and silence together, wrapped around Rothko paintings. Not that I'm trying to be Rothko, I'm just saying, like, if that's a way that painting can function, I want that experience with video. How do I produce that? So I made these paintings, very simple paintings. I was researching school desegregation at the time. It was like a rash of police killings and vigilante killings of black and brown children. It was really, it continues to be a bizarre time. But it was particularly bizarre between 2014 and 2016. And I was seeing a lot of correlation with the treatment or the value. What did I get into? I ended up drilling it down to exploring the perception of color and its influence on the value of life in public space. If these children aren't safe in public, I'm a public school kid, you know what I mean? Like when I'm researching this history on public schools and desegregation and the safety of children, and I'm living in a time when children are not considered a protected class, I was trying to figure out how those histories are collapsed and how I could use color and the disorientation produced from color interactivity to explore that. So this is stuff you can do when you're in school. Enjoy yourselves. I was also knitting when I was dropped between MIT and Yale. I'd learned how to knit. I worked with an artist named Otto Pina incredibly heroic, real deal artist who survived World War II, father of the Zero Group, another person, collective that y'all should think about in this era of like mass displacement and hyper gentrification in all the cities that I want to tell you to go to and check out, like, you know, the artist communities that are like now not there, that were there when I was coming up in your age. I'm not that much older than you. I'm a dropout, so things took me a little longer, but Otto and the Zero Group are a good story to look at because they made in the rubble of war. They made happenings, they made community when there was literally nothing left and nobody cared about what they had to say. It's important for us to remember that this isn't just about us like preparing to wait to get chosen, but we're responsible for creating and maintaining community for each other and for ourselves. So anyways, I was in school. Al Terrence Gumby was a community member, a friend. I was at Yale, where I used to go and visit Wells and Eric Mack and Julia Bland and other people. When I was at MIT, I'd come and visit them because I actually liked their community a lot. And I ended up there, and I had begun knitting. And I wonder if these fiber works were actually sculptures or paintings. I didn't know. You know, what's a painting? Is a painting, its colors are interacting, like what, blah, 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 what makes it so? So Al Terrence let me put one of these color studies on him, and I put him in front of the painting, and I realized that the color study came alive when it was placed onto the figure, and the figure was merged with the painting. So the video actually made the color study and the painting, it brought them together. And then the video itself, because it's durational, it's a 12-minute piece, becomes a painting because, you know, the lure I was trying to cast out was, will someone sit with me? Will someone sit with this painting for 12 minutes, the way these people sit with a Rothko for 12 hours? How long can I sit? And so I'm sitting there, and like Ferguson was burning at the time, and I used this strip of green that I added into the paint. It was a big aha in the studio. I was like, if I add green, I can use the green as a green screen, and I can merge this video I've recorded in a restaurant watching live news of this city on fire, and I can press it into the space of this painting, and then bring us all together such that Al Terrence and I are literally immersed in this history as we are in reality. When I showed this to my mother, she cried because I'm lip syncing a Doobie Brothers song. My mother and I love the Doobie Brothers. And I'm lip syncing a Doobie Brothers song. I realized one morning that I can embody Michael McDonald because I know all these lyrics, I know all these inflections. And Michael McDonald at the time, he grew up in Ferguson. And at the time it was really important. He wrote a letter and had his lawyer send it out to the press saying that there is no doubt that this is one of the most racist places in this entire country. I grew up there. There is no doubt that this boy would be alive if he were not black. There's no doubt, because there was all this doubt about why. There was all this, these attempts to justify this violence. This targeting of this specific community. And so this white man that everybody loves speaks up through his lawyer, says, oh, it's true, I'm from there. Because, I'm from Southern California. The Doobie Brothers, if you know anything about the Doobie Brothers, 70s, 80s, they're like, they appear to be like a Southern California like jam band. But they came from all over the country, and he came from Ferguson. So he wrote this beautiful letter, and it was I had this big sigh of relief. I was like, I can still love Michael McDonald. Woo! Because, I grew up listening to the Smashing Pumpkins. It hits different now, So, I see someone nodding. You might know, some people in here might know what I mean. It's actually pretty heartbreaking. So I realized that, I'm able to embody Michael McDonald through song, and I also, without my will, embody elements of Michael Brown with my skin. So I decided to lip sync this. This is called Tale of Two Michaels, Untitled Tale of Two Michaels, where I'm lip syncing the Doobie Brothers' It Keeps You Running. And when I played it for my mother, she cried because she saw Al Terrence with his face covered in color, and she was like, it keeps you, we're always running because who we are is obscured by how we are perceived as through color. And I didn't get that, actually, but it's like we make this work and we put it out in the world and people tell us about the work back to us. So I've probably taken up too much time already. But what I thought I was gonna come up here and do, and there's Shabalala's self, have fun, y'all, while you're in school with each other, really, have fun. build relationships and trust each other and support each other's work, because these are some of the people who were like right there in the middle of mine. So I thought it would be cool to read some of this, because I want you to want this book. And, real book launches, real writers read. So I thought I would ask Wells and Lachelle, two artists that I regard highly, who get to be here with you all on a regular basis. I want them to come up here, and I want us to try some reading together. When I'm teaching or when I'm facilitating, I always love to read with my students. If you haven't read Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents, get together, start a book club, read it together. And then you'll be ready to have conversations with more people. Also, Clay's Arc, the Clay's Arc trilogy is also really important about pandemics. So when you see the book, you'll see that I continue to make these networks, and then I continue to use them as catalysts to merge figures into history, the history, I guess, where they're already sitting. It's funny because sometimes I've been historicized as an abstractionist, but my inclinations are historically portraiture. I'm always fighting it. And then, apply to artist residencies because an alter ego may emerge. Everyone should be thinking about and applying to the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture if you really want to. Also, no pressure. No pressure. But the ARC Athens residency took me to Athens, Greece, and I had some realizations about fear and freedom. And it's continued. It's ridiculous, actually. But my mother and I, so Slow Jams is about my love of music and my love of love songs, which is something that my mother and I used to do together in the car on our way anywhere. We would listen to music and sing to each other. And during some of my hardest times, whether it's at Cooper Union or at MIT or at Yale, these songs have come back to me. And then they end up becoming the spine of the work that I create that protects me even like from all of my insecurities. So Lachelle and Wells, can y'all come up here for a second? Let me see. And okay, we'll just read a little bit. I apologize for my lateness. What's so funny? I was so insistent that my best friend come up here and join me. I'm like, I should have left you at home. You're distracted. Can we get another chair? Here, there's a chair right there. Okay. I'll stay here. And then, so we just only need one. So, to get started, this is a watery mirror. This is a watery mirror. Thank you all again for coming. I have so many questions for you all, so I'm actually going to, we'll just read a little bit of it, and hopefully maybe you'll be interested, but I really want to hear from y'all about what you've been doing. And if any of you have spent any time in the show, this is a conservatory school. I wanted to come here. I'm wearing the shirt given to me by SUNY Purchase graduate Allie Capel. I went to elementary school with someone who came here to dance and has been dancing all over the world ever since, Bernard Brown. I thought this was the perfect school because it's conservatory, I've spent my whole life around young actors, young dancers, young vocalists, young instrumentalists, doing what I do. And it's just really an honor to get to be here. I can't even express. So I'm gonna stop trying. So let's read a watery mirror. Let's read a little bit of this. So Geneva Ellis, Candace Williams, and myself, we discussed relationships between painting, collage, and the moving image. It's also a really good conversation to have with the work of Sandra Perry. She helped me understand this during the lockdown. We ended up teaching a class exploring painting as time-based media for Harvard Art, Film, and Visual Studies during the lockdown. And so because the only way we could experience each other's paintings or the students' paintings was through video. So she's a really great artist to know too. So I was joined by artists and educators Geneva Ellis and Candace Williams for this conversation about cross-disciplinary relationships between painting, collage, and video. Candace is publisher of Cassandra Press, lots of online materials and free classes she facilitates through Cassandra. We have known each other since 2006 when we were undergraduate students at the Cooper Union School of Art. Geneva Ellis and I met as exhibiting artists in the 2019 Whitney Biennial. She is a genius. Candace's sculptural collage works and Geneva's animated paintings inspired me to ask that we consider the terms illusion, immersion, and movement across our own projects. We shared images and ideas during a Zoom meeting on November 22nd, 2021. All right, the text has been transcribed and excerpted and edited for clarity. After beginning informally by talking about Janet Jackson, the Dandridge sisters, and histories of families of Black American performing artists, our discussion moved to defining illusion for ourselves. We then shared works we selected for this conversation. Lachelle, why don't you be Candace? Oh, shoot, you don't have a mic. Can you
talk loud?
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
When you were talking about illusion, Tomashi, I felt like white supremacy does that kind of doubling, always. A constant doubling, like with Rudyard Kipling's 1899 poem, The White Man's Burden. The newly colonized are half devil, half child. Maybe that's a place where all of your work plays around in.
Like taking advantage of ambiguity?
And dissonance. Those nuances that rely on the really intense feelings of confusion. I feel like I use confusion a lot, especially in composing images, to lure people into the line of sight that I want them to be in.
Candace, can you play the video collage Forever 21, The Essence of Innocence Suite? Also, you can see that in slow jams. I want to build off of what you set up here about seeking to lure the viewer into the line of sight. That's definitely what was happening for me with this piece, creating some sort of visual confusion that leaves us inclined to look at things we might not otherwise want to see. The work was inspired by a 2014 study on excessive force by police against Black children titled The Essence of Innocence: Consequences for Dehumanizing Black Children, and my ongoing research visualizing the Brown versus the Board of Education cases, with emphasis on the value placed upon the lives of Black children in public space. The two women wrapped in a knitted color study lip sync the backup vocals for Luther Vandross's 1986 song, Give Me the Reason, which establishes the timeline for the video. Luther's chorus lyrics say, "Give me the reason to want you back. Why should I love you again? Do you know? Tell me how. How to forgive and forget. Give me the reason to love you now. It's been a mighty long time. Never knew I'd ever be standing alone and outside with no one to love." I chose this piece to share because it was one of my successful attempts at challenging the video collage to hold characteristics of a painting. I used color, layering, and collage strategies to invite the viewer to consider it the way that they would a painting. I wouldn't tell people that going into showing it, and I would be careful about who I showed it to, because sometimes it was just too hard. I'd end up crying, and others would too. In 2019, I showed it to some young people at a summer artist residency program. That's the Yale Norfolk program, which I think y'all should, if you want to, you should be talking to your professors about that one. Where'd I go? So I showed it to some artists, a summer artist residency program. Some of the participants shared that the video felt to them like a painting while being a painful story to sit with. Geneva and Candace, I'm interested in what happens with your work when there's a disciplinary confusion or merging of disciplines that leaves viewers with an experience of the image that blurs their distinctions. For example, when a video projection has perceivable qualities of sculpture, or a sculpture becomes a painting, or a painting becomes a moving image.
Watching this piece, I was thinking about Terrence Nance's HBO series, Random Acts of Flyness. I was thinking through the way he constructed a Black filmic language. The fineness of the grain, ethos of the caricature, resistance to the caricature, reaction to the brutalization, galvanizing, using violent forces or violent imaging, martyr images to galvanize political messages. Even the side-eye within the character-based performances becomes a layer of grain, a Black filmic record. The first time I saw this happen was in some of Terrence's work. The extraction of those filmic gestures of being, it's really thinking about what the means of production are that have created all of those images and why they end up resonating within the Black experience.
Can y'all hear? Or do you want them to, you good? Okay.
Even Luther Vandross.
They said louder.
Louder?
Yeah. Sorry, I should
Even
get
Luther Vandross. I remember my mother fighting me about these live tracks where there were synthesizers, like so many Vandross songs, you know? She'd be like, they just killed it with that saxophone. I'm like, no, it's a synthesizer. It doesn't even matter at that point because you're bopping the same way. I'm bopping. There's probably a live performance of it. There definitely is the elevator music remix also. We all know those harmonies in their appropriate form or distillations into ringtones, TV jingles, street marching anthems. Watching your video, I was seeing film as a technology that can hold all those layers independently of the protocols that construct the film presence. I was thinking about that, the Albert-inspired color interactions, and the rhythm of the masking in and out.
So you have the thing, the facsimile or exact copy of the thing coming in and out of focus. What is the meaning or purpose of differentiating between the two? And when something is reproduced and placed next to the original, are they indiscernible from one another, or do they illuminate layered contrasts?
Yeah, that texture becomes a black texture, Geneva. A lot of the portraiture that happens in your work is similar. A vector or mask of the same face is extracted to reveal another aspect or layer of the creation of that initial mask.
Right, and neither face nor mask have a hierarchy over the other. They say something about one another, but what? I guess that hinges on vantage point. How arriving at conclusions about what you see often reveals as much about you as it does what you're looking at. That information exchange is almost reflective, like the thing you're saying about the conversations you're having with your mom. You're like, this is a synth, and she's like, no, that's a saxophone. That's just that just becomes a reflection of your relationship to sound. Or with Tomashi's video, the submerged interlay of focus and feeling. It's kind of like a reflector, utilizing that interplay of layer and depth and direction. It's like a mirror, or watery, the way water is reflective.
Let's pause. This is, okay. I would keep us here all night, actually just finishing this. But how are y'all doing? Are you interested? Should we stop for, we should probably stop. Should we stop for Q&A, or do y'all want to say anything? How are you feeling? Or do you want us to keep reading to you just for maybe 2 more pages? What do you want? Q&A. All right. Thanks, Wells and Lachelle. There's this bit that happens with Geneva. I hope that you all will I hope that you'll all go and find this essay or this conversation, especially as people who were still in school. Geneva, it was Candace who said, yeah, watery like a mirror, but Geneva goes on to talk about how her paintings are loaded with messages to her future self. Ooh, see? Yes. See? But yeah, maybe if I speak again, maybe I'll try to dip into this for y'all. But I know you have work to do. Yeah, does anyone actually have any questions or thoughts? Because if you don't, I will keep reading to you for 5 more minutes before we really do have to go. Hey.
Well, it's really wonderful to see your work, and I saw your work this afternoon in the Neuberger.
Thank you.
And one thing that I noticed is there's this beautiful way that you use black and gray in your work, and it almost like it just makes the color explode. There are certain areas that are just very, very subtle and almost like areas of shade that just really make the whole image explode. Can you talk a little bit about using those really, really subtle colors?
Goodness, in the videos?
In all of your work as a grouping.
You know, I hadn't noticed that. But see, thank you for, what's your name?
Carolee.
Carolee? Yeah, thank you for that. Carolee Schneeman?
Carolee Van Dyne.
Sorry. Like, you never know. Look, I stay starstruck among artists. You like literally never know who you're walking with. Thank you, Carolee. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I started using really bright colors. You know, I've always used bright colors. I keep thinking that something new was happening. Nothing new was happening. I started using very bright colors when I was a muralist assistant and apprentice in the Bay Area. And we used Nova Color paints. If you need to buy large batches of paints, you all together as a group, you know, like to save money, you know, buy small containers, buy buckets of paint. Those of you who are like hardcore painters like that, you don't have to just go to what's left of our art supply store infrastructure. You can order big batches of excellent on-site made color from Culver City, California, from Nova Color. That's where my painting teachers told me to go when I was in high school, and that's where all of the mural projects I've worked on, that's where we've gotten our paints, big buckets of incredible paint, incredible acrylic paint. But we used really bright colors in the Mexican muralist tradition, Si quiero Orozco Rivera. So, you know, intense color is meant to articulate mood and really to draw attention to a site in the built environment that you want people to see their own stories upon. And then I got to Cooper and I realized I'm completely color drunk. I don't know why I'm making these decisions when I choose color. I'm only thinking. I had a studio visit with Dre today, a third year, who's making some extraordinary experimental sculpture. And something that they said has stayed with me all day about wanting to move away from being lured into a cycle of making artwork for other people. But then the more we looked at their sculpture, the more I saw that it was made by the generosity of other people and the earth. Everything was found or given. It was all about community, actually. But I found that I didn't know how I was making my painterly decisions about color outside of needing to tell a people's story. You know, like it was all like I'm a worker that way. So I restricted my palette. I refused to allow myself to use any color second year in school. And so the color was only defined by the materials as I found them. And then eventually blue returned to the palette because I spent some time in Belize and I was the water, really. So yeah, I've been struggling with color forever, just feeling like I'm never good enough for it or something. Like I don't understand it.
Do you feel that?
I feel better with it now.
Yeah, so
did
you feel that really depended a lot also in terms of geography, like when you came from the West Coast to the East Coast, and that affected your sensibilities?
For sure. But like when I came back into using bright colors with intention, it was because I was doing research about Brown v. Board and the photographs that existed, which was really trailblazing, that there was photographic evidence used for the first time in a Supreme Court case to document the conditions that the NAACP LDF and Thurgood Marshall and his team, inspired by the work of Pauli Murray, no one had ever done that before, that there were these photographs of underfunded schools and the conditions. So I found all these photographs that I didn't expect to find, but they're all in black and white. And so my first experiments, my first year at Yale, were with these black and white images, and the read that I got back from my community was that the story must be old. That it must have been something I must be talking about. They was like, I don't know what you're talking about, but it seems to be about schools, and it looks like it was a long time ago because the images were black and white. So at the time, my BFF was working for the NAACP Boston branch, which is in the middle of a mall in Roxbury, Boston. And when I was not in New Haven, I'd be with her, supporting her. And in that mall is a Marshalls, and in that Marshalls is the children's section. And I would go there and I would look around the children's section and try to absorb the colors that I was seeing in the children's section, then take those back to New Haven and started painting with very bright colors, or printing with very bright colors, just talking with very bright colors, only not to make each color symbolic of like, red means this or blue means that, but only to articulate that the narrative was current, that the context was current, that the ramifications were current. We're living in this bizarre historic era of the rolling back of all of these public space altering policies that were employed before we were born. And we were not. I'm from a radical magnet school system in Los Angeles that we were not historicized to understand was a radical act of desegregating schools, putting me on a bus and sending me to a college campus to learn with artists at 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 until I was 11 and 12. That was radical. We didn't understand that. We just thought, we were just like, we were just born into this. We just have it. So we weren't trained to defend it. So we don't understand what we're losing. So I don't understand what's going on. So I started researching these court cases to understand public policy as public space. So like, what else can a public work be if it's not a mural? And then I started to see that these areas of governance that impact how all of us live our lives, whether or not we even understand what is happening under our feet, is the public space that implicates us all. So how do I make this current? I had to go back to color. Hey, what's your name? Jomaidi? Beautiful. I know a woman named Amaides. All right?
So in some of your pieces, your people that you photograph are wearing like these shawls.
Yep.
Did you knit those?
Yep.
Can you tell us more about the knitting that you did and the influence behind the color of the knitting? Or was that just like also, like you said, like accessibility?
Totally accessibility. I was a nervous wreck when I graduated from MIT. I was an absolute nervous wreck. I didn't realize going into that situation that I was the first Black person to matriculate, that I would be the first Black person and Black woman to matriculate through that program, which had become known as Art, Culture, and Technology. Historically had been the Visual Arts program, which emerged from the Center for Advanced Visual Studies, founded by Georgie Kepesh. There's a lot of people fleeing World War II came to the United States, like Albers very famously, but there were others. And they tied themselves to these big institutions that allowed them to continue Bauhaus philosophies. And I'm just, like y'all, I'm just an art school kid, just like looking for history. That's it. And I was interested in that program because they were talking about the built environment, public space, and that I wanted to be in that conversation. And it was stressful as heck, which gets talked about a little bit in the other conversation in this book with Rebecca Uchel, who studied history, theory, and criticism of architecture there. Yeah, it was something. So I was really shaken up. I got through it with a 4.7 GPA and ended with a full tuition scholarship, coming in with a half tuition scholarship. Don't let these places break you. Adapt. Robin D.G. Kelly spoke recently in Boston. He wrote Freedom Dreams, which just came into its, third edition? Second or third edition? But he said something really important about schools. And I'm real soft, real sappy, real emotional for art programs, art departments, art schools. Like my best friend said, I don't know what a real school is because I only know this. But he said something that was like really startling. He was like, this is, you are not supposed to go to these places looking to be loved. You go to these places to learn, to contribute, to shape, and to be shaped. And has been really hard for me. Like, I understand that now, that I don't ever have to go back unless I want to. But at the time, I was shook, as the young folks say. I was properly shook, and I wasn't sure if I would do anything again. I didn't have money for equipment to make videos. I'd been making these videos, and now I didn't have anything. Had a conversation with Brenna about access to shops, and also, hold on a second. No, I won't dig for my purse. Georgina. About making use of these shops while we have access to them. Because when we don't, making use of these shops while we have access to them, and then being ready to adapt, to make new workspaces collectively with each other, or to make woodblock carvings, to make paintings in your closet, to work with whatever you have. So some women in Cambridge taught me how to knit. And it helped me stop biting my fingernails so much. I literally needed something to do with my hands. and I would like sit in these like community meetings, these church meetings in my neighborhood where, you know, women were just talking, and I would see these older women knitting, and it just looked cool, and I wanted to do it. And so they taught me how to do it. And then my friend Dana in New York she chose crochet because crochet is where the real power is. Y'all know what I'm talking about. One needle, you could fill this whole room in about like 15 hours with a blanket yay long. You know, that's where the real power is. I am the nervous wreck who's knitting with 2 needles, and that's all I know how to do, just knit and purl, knit and purl. I made up a song in my head so I could learn how to do it, up, around, over, out, up, around, over, out. Just my busy mind. It was for me. It was for me. And then I could go to Michael's and get a couple of, you know, bundles of yarn for like $5 because I was so broke I couldn't even afford a cup of yogurt for a while. I started looking after children. So my first knitted pieces were really for me to cover my head and my neck while I waited for these English, German, and Canadian, Indo-Canadian children waiting to pick them up from like snowbound bus stops to get them to and from school or to and from gymnastics or whatever. That's how I supported myself for 2 years, and it was great. And during that time, the knitting that seemed real practical I started to wonder when I saw these colors colliding. I found myself excited, sitting on the bus with the kids, knitting, and it very, you know, art school people, it immediately became internally competitive. How fast can I go? How fast can I go? How many rows is this? You know, like it became very not random very quickly. And I became like excited about what the next color could be. And when I saw myself like wondering what's gonna happen when this color meets this color. Ooh, and this is gonna happen when this color meets this color. I was like, I'm painting, aren't I? This is the excitement that I feel when I'm painting. Maybe these are paintings. Maybe I shouldn't, you know, sell them on an Etsy store. Maybe I should hold on to them until I figure out what they are. And so I did, and then I secretly applied to Yale for painting with these portraits of myself and other domestic workers in Cambridge. And, you know, immediately made life difficult. Was like, I'm gonna give up the figure. You know, get to Cooper, I'm like, I'm gonna give up color. You know, I'm gonna see what I'm made of. Get to you, I'm like, I'm gonna give up the figure. You know, what is this? And yeah, whatever. That's what happened. That's what happened. And now they're sculptural, you know, they're holders for tableau vivant, a term that Josephine Halverson helped me understand. I used them in Texas with this incredible artist named Patrick. I knitted this thing for a white man to be on one end and for me to be on the other end, that's Emily Peacock. I didn't know who the people were gonna be, but I was knitting it hoping to go there and find out. And Texas was really crazy that summer. Sandra Bland had died while I was there. I went there after the McKinney pool party incident where these black children and all their friends were brutalized by police after being targeted by people in this gated community where one of the children lived. They had access to this there's a whole American history about restriction of access to pools and water. You know, like it's just crazy, like what we're living in, like this like very living history. It's disorienting. So I knitted this very big piece, intending to wrap myself in one end and someone else in the other end while holding the stress positions endured by black women and girls in Texas that summer. Which Josephine helped me understand is tableau vivant. There's an art historical term for this. So my question is always like, whatever I'm going through, whatever I'm trying to understand, whatever I'm confused about, can art hold this for me? Yeah, thank you. I'm sure. Oh, hey, I'm so surprised. I heard that people have been enjoying the show. It's really nice to be with y'all. What's your name?
My name's Emerson.
Hi, Emerson.
So I was one of the student performers
I thought so.
at your opening, and you were talking about the idea of like the intersection of painting and video and video becomes a painting. And when I was performing, I felt as if I was becoming part of the video. So then it's just kind of interesting to think that the performance is becoming the video, which is becoming the painting.
And I was just,
I'm done, let me leave.
I was just wondering what your thoughts in terms of like performance with video and how when one art medium collides with another. I was just really just wondering what your thoughts were on what's possible in that area.
Well, I'm wondering what your thoughts were. I mean, it sounds like we're going backwards into this question. It sounds like you're answering the question and then asking the question. But the goal of this show was for you all and your cohort members across other disciplines to go and find that out, to have that experience. I was hyped about what you and your partner were doing, your creative partner were doing, because you were answering all of my questions in real time. What happens when they all collide, and the carpet that Jose laid down, and the videos that Jacqueline made it possible it just all, I mean, you know, I was on one that night. It was like being intoxicated. To feel it all and to see it all, and you helped bring it to life. Thank you. Thank you. Any other thoughts? I know it's time to go. We like literally have dinner reservations, so I feel hot. But I just really want to give you a little bit of Geneva, just a little bit, if you'll tolerate me. I know people are like, I'm tired, I'm leaving. But I just want to give you just a little bit before we go. Does anyone else have any other thoughts or questions? Any of the artists that I spent time with today? Hey. Hi. What's your name?
Aiden.
Aiden? Yeah. Cool.
I was wondering, that last piece on the slide when you were in Texas,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I missed it. What was the significance of the knitted piece that were connecting the heads?
Yeah, so I was exploring color perception and its influence on the perceived value of human life in public space. And I went there before Sandra Bland was killed. I was actually lost in a sundown town, and I did not know it. And if there are any of us who don't know what a sundown town is, it's a place where a black person, or maybe a person of color in general, a non-white person, is not safe to be after dark. And I didn't know that I was lost in a contemporary sundown town. I was born in Houston, Texas, but I hadn't been back since I was shuttled out as an infant. And I was driving around by myself, and there were all these tolls, but no toll booths. It's all like flash. This was my first time experiencing like flashing light tolls, you know, when they take a picture of the license plate. It was very scary. It was dark, and I'm just seeing flashing lights, and I don't know where I am, and there's no one to stop and talk to. And my phone, my old phone, Facebook had push options had push access to my phone. My phone is like going off because everyone that I know was talking about how this woman was found dead in a cell in Texas, near Prairie View University, which is one of the places that I intended to stop in and, you know, seek library help for this research about school desegregation, because the first site of the first successful school desegregation case of Thurgood Marshall's career took place in Houston, Texas. Sweat versus Painter, can't make this up. 1949. So I was going to go around to all these schools, including Prairie View, where Sandra graduated from and had returned to Texas to teach, and was snatched in front of and was dead. What, the next day or two days later or something like that? 2 days later, yeah? So my phone is going off. I'm by myself. I'm on a dark highway in Texas. I think I'm following my instructions, but the signs keep saying I'm going towards San Antonio, and I'm not supposed to be going towards San Antonio. So I pull over, and I'm in Katy. And I didn't, it has no significance to me. I just pulled over so I could see what the heck is happening with my phone and not be, I can't be texting and driving in the dark and I'm already confused. So that happened. And I realized, so my goal was to finish knitting this thing, and I was gonna go to McKinney, to the suburb where that pool party incident took place. And I was going to find someone willing to hold the stress positions endured by Dejaria Becton. And, shame on me. I'm forgetting one of the teenage girls' names. It's in my title, it's on my title page, but the girls, just the girls. You know, so I had already done this experiment where I embodied Michael McDonald and Michael Brown. When I was an undergrad at Cooper, I faced down histories that scared me about the Tuskegee experiment by making drawings of myself as a Tuskegee experiment subject. You know, like, so placing my body in the place of people in these historic moments, that scared me so much that I didn't want to learn about them. So I thought, like, the only way I'm going to deal with this is if I identify that I'm implicated. Self-portrait as an Upper East Side nanny, you know, then I became a nanny, whatever. So I was going to do this again, except using the color study to wrap myself and somebody else in this color context, and to go into Texas in the middle of the summer and to hold those same positions. You know, he was like, he was pushing this girl's head down, which you see up there at the top, wrestling with this 16-year-old girl in a bikini. It was insane. And then Sandra Bland is killed, and then I was like, oh, I'm not safe in public. You know, that's the question. What is the value of human life in public space? If at a pool or at a school, or, you know, to Tamir Rice, killed in a park, you know? So luckily there were very nice people at Project Row Houses. Another really great residency program is available there that's connected to Rice University. They were kind enough to allow me to use one of the row houses to make work in. So I actually ended up holding all these positions with Patrick and with Emily in the backyard of Project Row Houses, because I was absolutely afraid of what would happen if I tried to do any of this out in public. Sorry, that was a long way of answering that. It takes me further away from what I wanted to give you with just this last paragraph with Geneva, and then we can go, because everybody has to go. So let me see. It's just really beautiful. So Geneva, can you show us the piece of yours that you selected for us to see? She said, yeah, sure. I think that for me, those methods originate in my own confusion with the composition, and also a desire to still have a time-based relationship with a two-dimensional work after I finished the painting. Her desire to have a time-based relationship with a two-dimensional work after she has finished the painting. Thinking about how to stretch an image out longer. Also, how to surprise myself in the process, and how to zoom in and out throughout the process. That contraction or expansion, depending on how you look at it, is a reflection of the place I was at before that, and the desire to communicate the need for breath or freedom or stretching or just moving in another direction. I said one pressure leads to another. Geneva said, yeah, it's reactive in a way that can generate growth. I said, I don't even think it matters what I said. She said, yeah, the pursuit, well, it kind of matters. So this makes me think about the pressure of an outer world that impacts our internal world, and then we make something and another pressure is created. A search for room through material, through disciplines, through whatever is informing the compositional impulse. That one pressure is leading to another in the pursuit of finding some room. Geneva said, yeah, the pursuit of more space, and also maybe honoring what led to that pursuit. Not to make new choices without acknowledging how you've arrived there. Honoring old choices to fortify new ones. Allowing room for inevitable growth rather than thinking of each new phase as conclusive. It's part of that expanding, contracting relationship to thought and emotion and creativity. I pulled up this painting because it feels really literal in the use of movement and layering in the work. This is from my recent show, Rats. I thought depth through semiotic flatness. I was thinking about rats in the context of making mistakes, entrapment, and infestation. And in this painting, I was like, maybe just rats. The rat is enough. That's fine. Sometimes I try to deal with the shyness of being earnest and vulnerable in a space that feels unsafe by over-exaggerating the esotericism or romanticism that often happens in painting. And sometimes I just want to be forthright about my desire for a painting to do more, or promise some type of, I don't know, just promise, like a painting is a promise or something. With this work plaguing in my face, I was pulling apart techniques I'd arrived at in larger works and applying them to the portrait, which felt a bit exposing when I started it, like vulnerable to make a portrait at that moment. I was thinking about the violence of white supremacy in art spaces and what that does to Black figuration. I was having conversations with friends at the time about how withholding as a reaction to violence and performing as a reaction to violence both felt oppressive. So then what do you do? And how do you communicate the things you want to on your own terms while also finding safety in that? In the show Rats, I thought the only way through that with myself was to name or contextualize the things that were keeping me from just communicating in a liberated way. So I inserted those things in the work, at least for myself, as a reminder for later that I was really hemmed up. And my judgment of the show was not solely through the lens of good, bad, or how this is being received. Am I naming the trap? Am I then walking into it and saying it's a fun place to be? I'm trying to think about those things while still enjoying all the freedom painting affords me. But what can it do? Does it need to do anything? That's it. Thanks for spending some time with me. Oh, we didn't take a picture together.
Thanks, Tomashi. There's some snacks out in the hallway. Thanks, everybody, for coming.